What's up, guys? It is your pal on wheels, Corey Hot Wheels, coming at you with another edition of Wrestling with Wheels. As I clear my throat. So, this week is a little late because I had a crazy week last week. I was barely home. I had to be out of my apartment basically like 4 days because they put a new shower in my apartment. So I haven't had any time to do Wrestling with Wheels. So the things we're going to talk about in this video are a little late, but I've had this card made for like a week, but, I just haven't had time to film. So, we are going to do that right now. So, let's first start out by talking about TWA's Road to Glory, which happened on February 3rd. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to go down the list of matches. I'll throw in some little snippets of everything that happened, give you my opinion, and so on and so forth. So, the first match of the evening consisted of the Black Dragon clique of Zayden Kane and Chuck Chronic defending their tag team titles against Dead Cell, which consisted of Vincent Cross and Damian Abel. Pretty back and forth match, four guys that, are no strangers to challenging and holding gold in TWA. And the match ended with, I have to think how the match ended for a second. I believe, it was a roll-up. Like, it was a kick and then, like, a jackknife cover on Vincent Cross. Dead Cell was not happy with that, so then they decided they were going to attempt to lay out BDK. And, we saw Mickey Doom come out to try to help. That really wasn't working. And then we saw the return of Yellow Man. So, the BDK now consists of Zayden Kane, Chuck Chronic, Yellow Man, Mickey Doom, and then, of course, they're managed by Coach. So, it looks like Dead Cell is going to have to get another member on their side. Because Michael Saint was not there at the show, and neither was Dr. Smiles. So, for the first time in a while, Dead Cell was sort of outnumbered. So we will have to see what happens with the BDK and Dead Cell at the Champions Ball event in March. And then we had Rick Rogers successfully retain his legacy title against Ref Cameron. Now, Cameron has been a referee in TWA for a number of months now, and with the exception of making a few wrestling appearances here and there, and, Rick Rogers felt that Ref Cameron was costing him and, kind of had it out for him in the matches. And so, back at the last show, New Dawn, before the Road to Glory Rumble, Rick Rogers berated referee Cameron, goading him into a match, and, thus setting up the legacy title match for the Road to Glory event. So, what happened? Rick Rogers beat on Cameron for a while. Cameron got some good offense in, but at the end of the day, it was that devastating... there was a cutter hit, but it was a cross-face submission that resulted in Cameron passing out and Rick Rogers retaining the title via submission. But, you know, the aforementioned cutter was hit after the match because Rick Rogers was not done with referee Cameron. Thus, you know, Mr. Samuel came out to confront Rick Rogers, you know, thus setting up a future match between these two, which I assume will take place at Champions Ball. Now, we had Joshua Charles defeat Vane Lewis in a TWA title match. You know, it was a fatal 5-way at New Dawn between Charles, Lewis, Vincent Cross, Connor Cross, and Big Rig, with Joshua Charles coming out on top. And Vane Lewis, after that match, challenged him one-on-one for the Road to Glory Rumble. And we had that match. I mean, a very back-and-forth match. Two top veterans in the wrestling industry, you know, and TWA. And it was a Falcon Arrow by Joshua Charles that allowed him to pick up the win over Vane Lewis. So, you know, I mean, Joshua Charles seems to come up with a different way to win each match. He's like Bryan Danielson, you know, always coming up with a different way to win his matches. And, you know, that's what makes him so exciting to watch. And then it was time for the Road to Glory Rumble. The participants included Alexander Crowley, Vincent Cross, Connor Cross, Chuck Chronic, Mickey Doom, Zayden Kane, newcomer Cody Frost, Farino, Draven Post, Mr. Slamuel, Big Rig, Damian Abel, Vitamin D, DC Rice, and Stacey Lynn Patterson, with the eventual winner being Yellow Man. Now, some notable things happened in this match. Alexander Crowley and Draven Post went at it because, if you remember, after their tag team title loss, you know, Draven berated Crowley, which eventually, you know, drove Crowley to hit Draven over the head with a kendo stick. So, you know, these two went at it in the match, you know, both men eliminating each other and then brawling all over, you know, the New Haven Civic Center. You know, Mr. Slamuel, he had a good showing in the match, but, you know, Rick Rogers came in and got his revenge from earlier in the evening, despite not being part of the match himself, but still ran in and eliminated Slamuel. And, you know, Vitamin D tried to come in and get some revenge on Damian Abel, but that did not happen, as he was once again destroyed by the Demon. And which the final two ended up being Damian Abel and Yellow Man. You know, Damian Abel thought he had Yellow Man, but Yellow Man was able to hold on to the ropes. And Yellow Man came back in and was able to somehow get Damian Abel over the top rope, thus solidifying his shot at Joshua Charles in the TWA title for Champions Ball in March. So, with that said, the next TWA event, as I mentioned, is Champions Ball. It's the first Saturday in March. I'm not sure what that Saturday falls on just yet. But, you know, stay tuned to TWA's Facebook page and you will get all the updates and all the matches that will happen at TWA's biggest event of the year, Champions Ball. Now, switching gears, let's go on to another wrestling event that happened the next day on Peacock, which consisted of NXT Vengeance Day. So, In the Dusty Cup Finals, we had the Wolf Dogs, which consist of Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker, taking on the team of Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. Now, this is a back and forth match. Trick, he's pulling double duty because later on in the evening, he challenged Ilya Dragunov for the NXT title, which we will get to here in a little bit. And, back and forth match, both teams gave it everything they had, but ultimately, it was Carmelo Hayes sacrificing himself, throwing Trick Williams out of the way, and taking the devastating spear from Braun Breaker and, suffering the pinfall, which allowed the Wolf Dogs to win the Dusty Cup, thus solidifying themselves as number one contenders for the D'Angelo family's tag titles, which this match will take place this Tuesday on NXT. So, that should be a good match. Braun Breaker, he's a after-mentioned, everybody's wanting to sign him. Raw, SmackDown. I'm sure Sean would like to keep him on NXT, but, we'll have to see where, who lands Braun Breaker. Because Braun Breaker, in my opinion, is a future world champion. So, I don't see the Wolf Dogs getting the tag titles on Tuesday, but we shall see. And then, in a match between two of the top women in NXT today, for the NXT women's title, it was champion Lyra Valkyria defending against Roxanne Perez. Now, these two went at it in what was one of the matches of the night and, beat the living crap out of each other. And, it was a pop rocks on Lyra Valkyria, but she rolled under the ropes. And then NXT Women's Breakout winner Lola Vice came out to execute her title shot, thus making it a triple threat match. And, you thought that, Lola Vice came in and, just nailed some offense. And it was another Pop Rocks on to Lyra Valkyria. Lola Vice was able to dispose of Roxanne Perez, and then Lola Vice tried to go for that devastating roundhouse kick, but Lyra was able to duck and hit her finishing maneuver and pin Lola Vice. And after a hard-fought, we'll just say 2 matches, because at first it was a one-on-one, and then it turned into a triple threat. Lyra Valkyria was able to come out on top as the NXT champion. So, and then later on, Roxanne and Lola Vice, brawled in the back, thus setting up a match on NXT, which Roxanne came out victorious. So we'll have to see what happens next for these 3 ladies in the future. And then we had the D'Angelo family taking on OTM. We first saw the debut of Jada Parker for OTM, and then Adriana Rizzo for the D'Angelo family. Both teams gave it their all, but it was a win by the D'Angelo family to win this tag team match and thus remain in control of the streets of NXT. And then in a hard-hitting no DQ match, we had Dijak taking on Joe Gacy. Now, I mean, throughout NXT these last few weeks, Dijak has thrown everything at Joe Gacy. You know, putting him through walls. You know, throwing him off a roof into a dumpster. And Joe Gacy just kept getting up. Like, I mean, there was no keeping him down. And then in this match, I mean, these men were just hitting each other with everything they had. You know, and then a Feast Your Eyes picked up the 1, 2, 3, 4 Dijak. But Joe Gacy was smiling as he was unconscious. Which brings me to a joke. Well, kind of a joke, but... You know, back in the day, I think it was Heath Slater's first action figure. He was with Christian, and he was smiling. Like, he had a smiling head scan. And, you know, and I had that pack as a kid. And, you know, whenever my cousin, brother, and I would be playing with wrestlers... You know, we were talking about the difference between the elite wrestlers and then, you know, just the regular WWE series wrestlers. And, you know, my cousin Zach, he asked, who would be out cold smiling? Well, some odd years later, we have our answer. And that man is Joe Gacy, who is smiling despite being unconscious. So... I just thought that was kind of funny, and I had to bring that up. And then we had Dragon Lee versus Obafemi for the North American title. You know, after a hard-fought defense that Dragon Lee had against Lexis King, you know, Obafemi came out and cashed in his NXT Men's Breakout Tournament shot and just pretty much disposed of Dragon Lee within minutes of winning the title. And, you know, this was the rematch for the North American title. And, you know, Dragon Lee gave it his all. But, you know, Obafemi, man, he's over almost 7 feet tall. You know, Dragon Lee, I mean, he's like Lucha Libre size, which is like 5'5". So, I mean, Obafemi, you know, put him down and is, I think, going to be a dominant North American champion for a while. And then in the main event, the long-anticipated match between the Iron Survivor winner, Trick Williams, and NXT champion, Ilya Dragunov. Now, this match was supposed to happen a while ago, but an injury that Ilya Dragunov sustained in a match against Rich Holland pushed this match back, and it was the main event. I mean, you could tell the crowd, you know, despite both men being good guys, the crowd was really behind Trick. And, I mean, these guys... I mean, they busted each other open. They beat the living heck out of each other. And, you know, Carmelo Hayes, he was at ringside. And, you know, Ilya tried to hit Carmelo, but, you know... Or, no, he shoved Carmelo into Trick. Thus, you know, taking out Trick's knee inadvertently. But, you know, Trick was still able to go. And then, you know, as both men were attempting to execute their finishers, you know, Ilya Dragunov was able to hit the Tornado Muscout and retain against Trick Williams. But that's not all. Because you see, what happened is that, you know, as Carmelo was consulting Trick, Trick turned around and then Carmelo clipped his knee, Trick's knee, and then, you know, just started repeatedly bashing Trick Williams' leg with a steel chair. And we later heard on NXT that the reason why Carmelo did that is because it was like, Carmelo said, like, look, Trick, you're basically meant to be a sidekick. And, it was jealousy. I mean, we all knew that Carmelo was the one that took out Trick, costing him the number one contender's spot the first time Trick had a chance. And we all knew that Carmelo was going to turn on Trick. So I look forward to having this match at Vengeance Day. In my opinion, Trick's going to go over, and then Carmelo is going to make his debut on the main roster. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are not done with this episode of Wrestling with Wheelz just yet, because Saturday night, WVWE had their Seasons Beatings event, and Corey Hot Wheels was able to actually watch that show for once. So, the first match was Ryan Steele taking on Jimmy J, and that match probably didn't even go 5 minutes. Ryan Steele hit that double knees to the face, or code breaker, whatever you want to call it, that has won him several matches throughout his career and disposed of Jimmy Hay. Then Ryan Steele came out and was interviewed by none other than Mr. Amazing C.T. Barry. And, C.T. Barry, he asked Ryan, he said, is this a preview of what's going to happen to Wildcat in the main event? And Ryan said that, Wildcat was in for much, much worse. And then C.T. Barry, said he believed that was going to happen, started kissing the Syndicate's butts for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on in C.T. Barry's mind. He's quite a stubborn man to reason with. Then, JC Grunge came out and made the announcement that there will be a gauntlet tournament that will take place over the next few shows to crown the new number one contender for the WWE Championship. And then the Lowlifes came out and had a promo addressing their feud with Lovable Lester. And Lovable Lester came out and, brought back Sean Steele, who was taken out by the Syndicate and the Lowlifes a number of months ago. And then we had Maverick defending his Mountain State title against William Renee. These two guys had a match at the last show, I do believe, with Maverick coming out on top. This was a rematch, a back and forth match. Both men gave it everything they had, but at the end of the day, it was Maverick coming out on top yet again after a distraction from the Syndicate and allowed him to clock William Renee with a steel chair, picking up the win. But that was not it. The Syndicate decided they were going to do to William Renee what they did to Sean Steele, and, wrap a chair on his leg and then whack him with another one, which is what they did. And then Taxi came running out from the back and told Tyler Strategist that this was all his fault, because of the history between the Syndicate and Tyler Strategist. Which, I almost forgot, Tyler Strategist was the one that started out the night asking the fans if they wanted him to take back power, and warned him that if he did, they would see a side of Tyler Strategist that they didn't like. But the fans were insistent. They did not want Syndicate in the WVWE anymore. And Tyler Strategist said he will do what must be done. So, moving on from that, switching gears, and a match in our women's division. It was another match between Raquel St. Helen and Brittany Storm, who was accompanied by Jada May. Now, Jada May came out and called out Lovable Lester because she was upset that Lester gave Raquel another chance at the title, or at a match, excuse me. You know, because there were some shenanigans involved in the last match between Storm and Helen. So, I mean, you know, both women gave it everything they had. You know, these two ladies have been training their butts off. You know, they have come a long way since they've started training. And, you know, and Jada May got herself involved yet again, thus allowing Brittany Storm to pick up the win. And then, as those two ladies went to the back, Storm and May that is, Raquel came over for an interview session with C.T. Barry, and C.T. Barry told Raquel that he saw no cheating, which I don't know what he was watching because there was definitely cheating. But, you know, I'll give some friendly advice to Raquel. Maybe it's time you put someone in your corner to make sure Jada May stays uninvolved in the match. So, with that in mind, let's move on to the next match. And it was yet another match between Nate Steele and Alan Platinum. Now, Mr. Alan Platinum has not had the best of luck against Nate Steele and the rest of Syndicate. And, you know, I gotta give Alan credit. He has the heart of a lion and gave it his all. But yet again, and there was no cheating by the Syndicate. Let me make this perfectly clear. I know this will shock everybody. There was no cheating by the Syndicate. This was a fair one-on-one match, ladies and gentlemen. And Nate Steele was able to, yet again, get the best of Mr. Alan Platinum. And he was interviewed by C.T. Barry, who, again, decided he was going to kiss the Syndicate's rear end for whatever reason. I don't know why. And, you know, asked Nate, like, how many times do you gotta beat up this loser? Pointed right at Alan Platinum. And Nate responded with, I'm done with Alan Platinum. Give me more worthy challengers. So we will see if the powers that be at WVWE grant Nate Steele his wish and give him more worthy challengers. And then Alan Platinum was talked to by Tyler Strategist, who informed Alan that he would not choose him to be on the team that takes down Syndicate because of how many times Alan has failed to take down the Syndicate. So, you know, we will see what happens with Nate Steele and Alan Platinum moving forward. Then, in a brutal triple threat match, we had Prodigy and Damian Abel going up against Taxi in a non-title match. But if Prodigy or Damian Abel pin Taxi in the match, they would be the new #1 contender for the Hybrid Championship. Now, I mean, these three men are three of the top guys in WWE through everything, including the kitchen sink at each other. And, Prodigy took a nasty chair shot that busted him open. And now, as Lovable Lester said on his recap, Prodigy is not cleared by WVWE Medical to compete at the next show. But, Damian Abel was able to successfully pin Taxi, thus earning himself a shot at the hybrid title the next show, which is February 24th. And then Damian Abel was interviewed by C.T. Berry and said that, this is just a preview of what's to come Taxi's way when they clash for the hybrid title. And then we had James Enoch, accompanied by his brother Paul Io, taking on the self-proclaimed real world champion, Aaron James. Now, these two men, once again, had another back and forth match, but, the Syndicate decided to stick their nose into the match and, helping Aaron James pick up the victory, which, in my opinion, is one of the best looking DDTs I've ever seen. Giving Aaron James the victory over James Enoch. And then, as they tried to beat up on James Enoch, JC Grunt, or Taxi, Alan Platinum, came out to aid James Enoch, and the Syndicate retreated. Then, in our next match, we had World Champion JC Grunge taking on Jimmy J, because when JC Grunge spoke earlier in the night, he was given a Valentine by Jimmy J, and Jimmy J basically said he was entering the gauntlet. So, JC Grunge came out with the returning Sean Steele and the returning Mouth of West Virginia, Lovable Lester, but he was not so lovable, because after JC Grunge successfully defeated Jimmy J, the Lovable Lester called out the lowlights and said that he was managing JC Grunge and Sean Steele moving forward, and will do whatever is necessary to take out the lowlifes and their new recruit, Jim Daly. Which, silly me, I forgot to mention that Jim Daly had a match with, I cannot remember his name. But, nonetheless, Jim Daly, God, there's too many Jims, was victorious in that match. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we had the main event, Ryan Steele versus Wildcat. Now, this match did not start according to plan, because Ryan Steele decided to get the jump on Wildcat, and we were a little late ringing the bell. But, after the bell was finally rung, these guys went at it for a while, and then the Syndicate decided they were going to run in, thus later having the DQ, because yet again the bell did not ring, on time, which, hey, it happens. You know what I mean? It takes a lot, especially when you're dealing with the Syndicate. So, to end the show, Wildcat announced that he wanted to challenge Ryan Steele yet again on the 24th, thus Ryan Steele accepting. So, with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the next TWA show is the first Saturday in March, and the next WVWE show is February 24th. And that, my friends, is going to do it for this edition of Wrestling with Wheelz. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.